Someone had called her, confirming she was still on the way. It was a very strange and awkward interaction, but she really needed this job. It would change everything for her. The sun was just rising over the skyline of Echo City, and yet she was already an hour late for the gig. She was exhausted, and it took her forever to find the venue, which turned out to be a mysterious, rundown industrial warehouse, repurposed with a stark, modern aesthetic. She was so tired she could barely remember the drive there as she threw the car in park, but she shook it off and hopped out of the car. She grabbed her things and ran inside as fast as she could. She was greeted by a large, heavily tattooed man who checked his list for her name. The clipboard looked comically small in his big, brawny hands.
Name?
He asked, peering over his designer sunglasses despite there being minimal sun.
Emily. Emily Rogers?
She smiled and posed as if it might help him locate her on the sheet quicker. He said, exchanging glances between her and his roster. He seemed to have found it, but instead of greeting her, he held out a black satin bag in front of her.
Phone,
He says barbarically, gesturing for her to relinquish her cell phone into the bag. She complies, conflicted and skeptical.
All right, head straight back.
He says, bored but satisfied. Emily felt a mix of exhilaration and nerves. Following the hastily handwritten signs on the walls, she galloped down a long hallway and finally found a large factory floor segmented into hair, makeup, and fitting areas. The air was electric with anticipation. Tall, thick black curtains partitioned the bustling fashion experts and assistants from the runway area. They were buzzing around like insects while they completed their assigned tasks. Although the dawn had just broken, none of them would be leaving until sunset that evening. She poked around the backstage area, searching for the designer she was hired to assist, the one and only Victor Douglas. She slid back the curtain to get a look at the runway. It was in an odd configuration. Everything looked movable. She noticed there were things suspended from the ceiling and wondered what they were used for. A large iron ring, big sharp hooks. Were these just left over from the factory when it was in operation? They looked new and untarnished. In a darkened back corner was an enormous fish tank filled with crystal clear water. It was at least 40 feet long and 10 feet tall. Perhaps these were all just decorations, eclectic props. Douglas was renowned for his avant-garde approach to fashion, and his stunning shows were one of a kind. Is that why he had a strict ban on phones? Maybe he wanted to keep this event exclusive for the buyers only. She suddenly started to feel nauseous. This just might be the most important job of her budding career. The selection process was oddly competitive. There were a lot of strange social exercises she had to perform in person, and seemingly irrelevant questions she had to answer. But she made the cut, beating out several other assistants with many more years of experience than she had. She felt hand-selected, and the criteria she met will always remain a mystery to her. Maybe they could sense that she would have killed for the chance to work with Douglas. He was a renegade of fashion, and the revolution would be live on the runway in just a few hours. Backstage, chaos reigned as makeup artists, hairstylists, and dressers prepared the models. She finally spotted Douglas, standing in a corner with his arms crossed. He was lean and older, and although he was a designer himself, he dressed very minimally. He was keyed into the energy and activities happening around him, and had a very severe look in his eyes. It was as if his life depended on the success of this show. Despite his slight unapproachability, Emily greeted him enthusiastically.
Hi, Mr. Douglas. I'm Emily Rogers.
She said, smiling. Though he didn't look at her, Douglas's lips finally curled up into a smile.
Ah, so you are. Are you ready for the wildest night of your life, Emily?
He asks, eerily calm.
Well, I sure hope so. I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity. Just, let me know what you need, and I'll take care of it.
That sounds marvelous, Emily. Why don't you start by getting out of my face for a while?
Taking his advice, she got herself acquainted with the backstage area, looking through the makeup and clothing racks to increase her familiarity with his work. They were surprisingly basic. Hanger after hanger of block, muted colors with stretchy commercial fabrics. Emily tried not to feel disappointed.
Oh my God, Sarah. It's been forever.
A voice corrupts her daydream and pulls her back to reality. A young blonde woman wearing a cardigan and jeans has her arms stretched out towards her.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not Sarah.
Emily said, politely declining the hug.
You're not Sarah Miller?
She said, incredibly confused.
Nope, I'm Emily, one of the personal assistants.
She waves sweetly at the stranger as she introduces herself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm Jessica Tucci. I'm, here to watch the show.
She said, though there seemed to be more behind it all.
Great, enjoy.
Emily said, attempting to slowly back out of the conversation.
Wait.
Jessica erupted in a plea.
I just had a few questions. You're working with Victor Douglas, right?
I probably can't help you. I've only met him today. Are you a journalist or something?
After a moment, the woman agreed with Emily.
Sure. Yes, a journalist. I just wanted to know what we might expect tonight. Anything innovative?
Your guess is as good as mine, Jessica.
Emily says, feeling threatened and ambushed.
Oh, okay, I understand. It's just, I've been following this designer for a while and I wanted to see his work in person. The vibes are a little off around here, though, don't you think? Well, anyway, sorry for mistaking you earlier. You just look so much like my friend from high school.
Emily forced a smile and returned to her vague responsibilities backstage. She found a disheveled table of items, including baseball bats, axes, and swords. They were probably going to be used to punctuate the story the clothes were trying to tell. While she perused more random designs, props, and set pieces, Emily was distracted by a group of models sitting in makeup chairs in front of mirrors. Each was perfect in their own way to Emily. Their eyes were closed while the makeup artists situated their final looks for their walks. Douglas's modeling coach stood behind them, speaking in a smoky, soothing voice. She was gorgeous, no doubt a retired model herself. She walked up and down the space around them, her heels emitting a rhythmic popping sound. Her curiosity piqued, and Emily edged closer to hear what she was saying.
Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, you are amazing because you look amazing. You are free and in complete control of your body. You are capable of the impossible.
The woman intoned.
You are strong, stunning, and prepared for anything. You are invincible. You are the moment, and you are the main attraction.
Emily watched the model smile and nod, looking refreshed and blissful. Emily shivered, feeling an uneasy chill down her spine. Their makeup was ready, and they filed orderly away from the space and into their next station, only a few minutes until showtime. As Emily looked around the area, Douglas's eyes in the corner caught her own. He smiled, his gaze intense and brooding. She quickly looked away, joining the others at the clothing racks for their final fittings. The MC, a DJ from the city, was given the signal to begin the show. The lights dimmed, and the sound from the subwoofers vibrated the bodies of all in attendance. Emily batted the curtain to the main stage lightly so that she could spy on the crowd without detection. People from all over the world were shifting excitedly in their chairs, whispering to each other behind their show programs. It was Echo City Fashion Week, where designers gathered to showcase their latest collections. Closing out the show this year was Victor Douglas, the most anticipated designer of the season. Known for pushing boundaries, the enigmatic innovator promised a spectacle unlike any other. The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers.
Welcome everyone to Echo City Fashion Week. Tonight is the final night, and it'll be a show for the ages. Before the night is over, you will witness death-defying catwalks, gravity-defying poses, and breathtaking fashion. Nothing you are about to witness will be seen anywhere else in the world. Designer Victor Douglas cordially invites you to experience Threads. Enjoy the show.
Pulsing, electrifying music spilled into the room, and the first wave of female models began gliding down the runway. They had a fluid, supernatural grace. They were dressed in vibrant cocktail dresses, while axes, clubs, bike chains, and brass knuckles swung carelessly in their grasp. The audience gasped in awe. Each one balanced precariously in heels that were comprised of just a single 4-inch stiletto spike under the arch, spinning gracefully on them at the end of the runway. The audience clapped lightly, delighted with the design but were unsure of the presentation. Emily poked her head out to get a look at the reactions of the onlookers. Just then, a loud snap, followed by a stumbling, thunderous thud rang out. A girl had already fallen on the runway, dropping her axe, but she recovered and pressed on. Emily stretched her neck to see over the heads of the audience, and she became sick to her stomach. The fallen model's ankle was clearly broken as the bone was protruding, but she kept walking, maintaining that mesmerizing poise with the joy and satisfaction of walking in Victor Douglas heels. Her ankle, however, was mangled and bent at a right angle, each step deepening the wound. At the end of the catwalk, the model winked at those in the front row, their expressions of horror not fazing her. As she made it backstage, staff members swooped her up and rushed her away from the area. Emily is aghast, her heart thumping in her chest harder and louder than the music. She looked over to Douglas, whose expression hadn't changed since she met him. He looked at multiple TV monitors, checking for blemishes with the stage and setup, but the critically injured woman didn't seem to inspire any concern. The next wave of models, fitted in alluring, sheer, pastel-colored formal dresses, came swinging in on metal hooks suspended by chains from the ceiling. They were pierced through the skin of their shoulder blades and looked serene and confident in the face, smiling into the crowd below them as they swung by. The crowd gasped and screeched at the sight initially, but their shock eventually transformed into wild applause. Backstage, Emily's unease grew. These feats were too perfect and too dangerous to be performed without error. As far as she knew, these models weren't professional stunt people. She approached Mia, one of the veteran models, during a short break in the show.
Mia, how are they doing this? Aren't they scared of getting hurt?
Mia looked at her blankly, her eyes glazed.
We have the best coach in the world. We trust her, and we devour the runway each time.
A single glossy rogue tear threatened to drop from her charcoal-lined eye, which she wiped away quickly.
Are you okay?
Emily asked, careful not to offend her.
I'm just sensitive to the makeup is all.
Emily frowned.
But what if something goes wrong?
Nothing goes wrong.
Mia replied, her voice harsh.
We're perfect.
And Mia meant it. The other models swirled and dazzled in the backstage area, engaging with each other only when necessary and ready to walk on stage at a moment's notice. They were beyond focused. The break was almost over, and she saw the larger staff members wheeling in the large fish tank, leaving it dead center in the main stage area. She wondered what Jessica, the journalist, would think of all of this. She spotted her backstage, cornered by the modeling coach. Jessica laughed nervously with her as the coach swirled her fingers around expressively as she spoke. Emily waited patiently for them to wrap up their conversation, picking over the table of snacks. Suddenly, Jessica walked away and towards the door to the exit. As she passed by Emily, she slipped on a small, neglected puddle of blood left behind from the broken ankle.
Whoopsies!
She said, giggling at Emily, finding her footing again.
Careful, Emily. There's a little bit of blood there. No running at the pool, right?
She dashed down the hallway and Emily never saw her again. At least she got her name right. The DJ returns to the mic and informs everyone the final acts of the show are about to start. The audience rushed to their seats. They didn't want to miss a single thing. Emily had to wonder if any of them were still interested in buying these designs anymore. The stunts alone seemed to have sold them on the Douglas brand. A hook ladder was added to the side of the fish tank, as well as one inside it. Emily made the mistake of standing near the entrance of the runway, and beautiful swimsuit-clad models barreled right through her to get to their marks. She nearly fell over. Right on cue, they strutted up to the ladder and waited their turn to climb up and into the tank. They smiled as they slipped gracefully under the water, their bare feet planted flatly on the bottom of the tank. They started to walk around the inside of the tank as if the glass box was a runway inside. They smiled and posed at the people outside of it, flexing and being cheeky. Their hair was suspended in a ghostly way in the water as they walked and posed. Emily was impressed. They didn't seem to be struggling or showing any signs of fear. Emily caught herself holding her breath with them, curious as to how well she would do. But as she did, she found it impossible to match their breath support. She was sure they had to have some sort of oxygen mask on, but they couldn't. They just had swimwear on. Eventually, some of them, though still smiling, started jerking, grabbing at their chests. But they kept walking and posing, playfully waving at their captive audience, who were haunted by what they were seeing. Emily whipped her head around to find Douglas at his usual spot, looking intently at the TV monitors, ensuring his garments looked perfect underwater. He seemed pleased as punch. She had to do something if no one else would. The table of weapons would work. She had to grab the bat and smash the fish tank open. She couldn't stand by and watch this tragedy unfold. She had only just grabbed the baseball bat when the modeling coach grabbed her hand. She slowly shook her head at Emily, boring deep into her eyes. Emily had the overwhelming urge to stand down. She dropped the bat and backed away from it. The coach smiled, pleased, and pulled Emily by the shoulders to watch the rest of the show. After a few more tense moments of watching the near-drowning models, one by one, they climbed the ladder inside the tank and strutted soaking wet to an absorbent area behind the curtain. If any of them needed medical attention, they didn't show it. Emily was shocked at the lengths to which these models were willing to go to walk in this show. It couldn't be worth it. At any rate, the show had to go on. It was time for the finale. The tank had been replaced with a small landscape of sand, and Mia, barefoot in an incredible studded leather ensemble, prepared her pose at the entrance, waiting for her cue. Staff members swiftly entered the stage area with barrels of tinkling material rustling inside. It was coarse, sparkling glass bits. They inverted the barrels and poured out their contents in a straight line as if to create a dangerous, macabre runway, leading right up to Mia. Emily's stomach lurched the half-eaten sandwich and watermelon from lunch. She tapped her foot, attempting to ease her anxiety. But if this was the finale, she knew something unbelievable was about to happen. The music cranked loudly. There was no reason for anyone to be able to hear each other over it. All eyes would be on Mia. She was the moment. She drew in a breath and lifted her chin, the light catching her flawless, glowing skin. The large, gorgeous, diamond-encrusted sunglasses she wore swallowed her face whole. She began to walk. The soles of her feet crunched over the glass shards. But her pace and her gait never wavered. Her hips flicked left and right. Her strong thighs flexed with every step, and her arms swished elegantly as she walked. Her long, flowing hair flapped perfectly in the air, dusting the back of her black leather jacket. She finally met the end of the row of glass, a faint red trail left in her wake. No one spoke a word or made a sound. They were in euphoria in light of the mortal peril the model just put herself through, all in the name of fashion. But it wasn't over just yet. Out of the corner of everyone's eye, a large metal ring descended from above and seemed to be dripping with something. As it reached Mia, she delightfully clutched it in her hands and sat inside of it, like an acrobat would. She removed her sunglasses and tossed them playfully into the crowd. Her smile beamed. Raising an eyebrow, she looked up at the source from where the ring came, just as a bright flash lit up the rafters. A cascade of flames traveled down the chain connected to the ring, igniting everything it touched. It finally reached Mia, and the entire ring lit up with a roar. Mia used her toes to spin herself quickly inside the ring. She appeared trapped inside a terrifying vortex of lawless flames that desperately kissed Mia's skin. But still, she posed and pouted glamorously. It was hard to tell if she was engulfed, or if she was truly defying death. Just as with everything else in Douglas's show, there was one more surprise. She was suddenly hoisted up and over the audience, illuminating the dark industrial room like a fire-breathing dragon. She was swung behind a curtain and out of sight, presumably extinguished safely somewhere nearby. The audience side-eyed each other, unable to decide whether to clap for or cope with whatever it was they just witnessed. All the available models took their final walk upon the catwalk of broken glass, clapping and smiling. Victor finally makes his appearance, taking a bow at the end of the catwalk. The crowd cheered and stood up on their feet, some even on their chairs. For some reason, seeing the man behind it all left them disinterested in any explanations, and grateful for the chance to be a part of Douglas's latest fashion show experience. But Emily decided she needed answers. She was nearly in tears, overwhelmed by emotion. She looked around at everyone else, who seemed to be congratulating each other on a job well done. Some of the swimwear models, their lips still blue from their underwater walk, smiled and high-fived. Then her eyes landed on the modeling coach in the shadowed corner. She was teetering her heeled shoe on the floor, fidgeting with her thin necklace chain. The realization hit her like a lightning bolt. Her heels, her hands, her voice. Was she hypnotizing the models? Was she making them Douglas's puppets? It might have seemed crazy, but it's the only thing she could think of. Something sinister was going on. She could just feel it. As soon as she could, Emily confronted Douglas after the show.
She's hypnotizing the models. That's how they're doing those dangerous stunts.
Douglas's expression darkened, but then he smiled, a chilling, predatory smile.
Very perceptive, Emily. And so what? My shows are legendary. No one needs to know how or why. No one cares. These models are all safe under her control. They know what they signed up for.
It's wrong. They don't even know what's happening to them.
Emily protested. Douglas leaned forward, his eyes pouring into hers.
So go ahead, Sarah. Expose me. No one will believe you.
My name is Emily, all right? Emily!
Emily's heart raced. She knew he was right. She needed proof. Otherwise, she could kiss her career goodbye with a wild accusation like this.
Oh, is it?
Douglas questioned calmly.
Are you sure you're Emily Rogers?
He smiled darkly, baring his teeth. What was he asking? She would know her own name, wouldn't she? Although, it was strange how everyone kept calling her Sarah, like some kind of running inside joke. She heard a faint popping sound in her ears. It sounded like high heels easing down a runway. A calmness washed over her. Her skin was invaded by goosebumps. How could she not realize?
But why me too?
Emily asked in despair, realizing she may in fact have been this Sarah all along.
As a control measure.
Douglas admits freely.
We needed to know they were buying what we were selling without knowing our little secret. You helped us see it all through their eyes. And you did wonderfully, Sarah.
Then the voice of the modeling coach engulfed her entire consciousness.
But now it's
Wait,
time
wait,
for you to
wait.
wake up.
Don't you
In
dare.
3,
Stop.
2, 1.
Mr. Douglas, it was a pleasure working with you. Gosh, today has been a blur. I can barely remember a thing.
With you as well, Sarah. I'll send a letter of recommendation in the morning.
Wow, thank you. That would be amazing.
Well, you've earned it. Now get out of my face.
Sarah left the building soon after, reclaiming her phone at the door.
Good night, Sarah. Drive safe.